What I'm going to be doing today is just kind of looking at the whole idea of the free lunch and who makes what decisions, what kind of society we live in, kind of the movers and shakers, and where we as individuals and families and communities fit into the program. And the one thing that we do that I would really like everybody to pay more attention to, all of us, I think the one thing is when we're making decisions to be them made consciously. Don't go because somebody else decided to. Don't do something because the other person, you're waiting for somebody else to make the decision. The key here is to make active decisions yourself, and that's one of the things I think we're losing in our society. And one of the things we have to really work on is to make conscious decisions. And the other thing is the whole idea anymore of where do you get your information? There are so many sources now that are basically out there and just replicate all sorts of misinformation, and they put various spins on it. So just because somebody said something doesn't mean it's something that you should follow. And we're going to get into this kind of whole thinking, but this is kind of one of the things that I think is very important, is to know your source, know where the data is coming from. You don't have to know everything about it, but some of them are pretty simple to figure out if they're giving a good overall view, or is it spun to do something that is to their benefit or their company's benefit, or something like that, to make you, kind of throw you off the track so you follow what they decide. So, yeah, it'll work occasionally, okay. The whole idea is we need to take responsibility, individuals. We're the one species that is impacting the earth more than any other species. Whether you believe in global warming, whether you believe in how much is human supported or how much is human adding to the natural greenhouse gases, all that, it's kind of immaterial. Because you'll see some of the information I show out. It's basically the earth is warming. And how much of it is due to us is still kind of up for actual figuring out a little bit, but it's more and more becoming obvious that humankind has had a big impact and is having a big impact, and it's getting worse as we go along. Here again, the whole idea goes back is we as consumers make decisions every day that could impact this. So to understand that is very important. And is it free to live is it free? No. Is it possible to live in a waste-free environment? That's one of the things I think we're going to have to be dealing with for the next 20, 30, 50 years, is how do we decrease our waste? And here I'm just defining waste as anything that is not a used byproduct. So anything going up your smokestack, anything coming out the tailpipe of your car, anything that goes to the dump, anything that you just throw out and don't use, anything that is flushed down the toilet, anything that is dumped into the water. All of that is part of our waste stream. And that's one of the things we'll have to work on. I'm just going to show you some information. Some of this will be dealt with a lot more detail, but not on the scientific side. My course is basically information for the non-scientists. But we're going to be referring to things like this, where these are the three substances that make up, or gases that make up greenhouse gases that cause, the Earth to reflect back more of its heat than it has in the past. And there's the makeup of it over there. And there's all sorts of ways to do measurements, and it's becoming more and more accepted by a higher and higher percentage of anybody in the atmospheric sciences that the very large increases are probably due to the starting of the Industrial Revolution back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, and basically we've just been adding to it since then. Things have been dumped for free into the atmosphere, and they're having big effects on that. And the one thing that's interesting too is, again, here's the total. This is just one. This is carbon dioxide versus the average world temperature. And again, there's a big increase happening in 1900 on. There seems to be a correlation. Now, is it all human beings doing all of it? The question now that a lot of people are really delving into is what's the human effect versus what's the natural warming and cooling of the Earth. There's been lots of information about ice ages, warming ages, various things. The temperature of the Earth does fluctuate. It's not flat. So the question now is how much is human effect of the greenhouse gases, because greenhouse gases, all of them together increase the temperature, and how much is natural. The one thing that I think is interesting is now that we have satellites, the lower line here is the amount of energy hitting the outer Earth's atmosphere. That you can measure. That is constant, and it's and it fluctuates with the sunspot cycle, the 11-year cycle. And that's how they found out about the sunspot cycles, is with these type of measurements. But then on the same graph at the top, even though the energy is going up and down, there is an increase. Presently, there is an ongoing increase in the average Earth's temperature. So, and that has loads of impacts on everything that we do when it comes to, if it's getting warmer, it's going to increase weather fluctuations, the sea level, droughts, as well as heavy rains, all that type of stuff will be impacted. So my question for us is, we've basically been using the atmosphere and the waters of the world as free dumping sites for the last, probably 100 years, if not more than that. And are we already in the payback? Are we already paying for our past sins? I think we might have already reached the maximum amount that the Earth can adapt to, and now we're having negative impacts. So, and this is another, a very complex slide that, and if you come to my class, you'll figure out how to use all this. But the cool thing here is there is now a very scientific way, and it's called the energy return on investment, the EROI of a project. How much energy do you have to put in for what you get out of it? And the bigger the ratio, if you get a lot more out than you put in, that's a good project, and it has a lot less effect or impact on the world than if you're putting a lot of time and energy into low return projects. And the 1 through 5 is our key ways of dealing with energy for the cars or electricity, things like that. The biggest by far, the number one, is conventional oil sources. And you can see the EROI historically has been 16, which is relatively good of all those up there. But then the one thing that a lot of people are worried about, the Alberta oil sands, is they're down, the green one there, and their rate of energy return is only 5. And the trouble with that is that you only get out 5 times as much energy as you put in, and this is only the production. It's not the transportation, it's not all the different needs when it comes to adaptions for cars, different things like that. So it's actually a little worse than that. So the minimum EROI there, 5 to 9, that's kind of most people's view of what you need to actually make it a viable project, that you get out enough to pay for what you put into it. And the oil sands are marginal at best, and in some instances they're negative. You don't get enough out for what you put in. So the question there is do we need to do this? And the other thing, one of the good ones is hydro, but the problem with hydro, it's only the 5th, it's 4 out of 5 on our top 5 energy sources. But then you have to also deal with the area that is flooded and things like that this doesn't add into either. It's just this chart only is how much is built, what does the steel cost, what does the cement cost, what does the refining cost, things like that. So there's other things that are in this. But this is basically saying that as we're going along in time, the amount of energy we're returning as we're using lower and lower grades of oils is getting a lot closer to just a break even, where we don't get out much more than we put in, and therefore we're just going to have to do more and more and more and then get less and less back on the energy side, which isn't good. So that's just kind of it's kind of a lead into some of the stuff I'm going to be covering and on the course. The next thing is, for today, there's several things that I think are very important. And one of these that makes the assumptions I'm going to be making for everything I'm going to be talking about. And I always call them rules of thumb. And one, I think as individuals and collectively, we affect our world. We're at the point now where we need to think about that. And I think we're already past the point of where we can continue not adding the cost to projects for dealing with the wastes. Those have to be added in because we pay for them, whether it's, at this point, whether it's the company that is doing the production or the dumping, or the city that's doing the dumping of the wastes. We are paying for it for lower quality food, rising water temperatures, rising air temperatures, and just a lot of other impacts, bigger storms coming in that we pay for it as a society if we don't pay for it individually. And it's just not going to be the business as usual anymore. The one thing I have to apologize for is this kind of setting. I'm a firm believer in we all are individuals, and as such, we all have our own unique realities, which are a function of who you were born to, your parents, which was just kind of an open lottery. The next one was your DNA. What's your health like? A lot of it is being more and more found out that you just inherit that. And then the decisions you make, your training, your education, the people you interact with, the societies, the groups, every one of us has a different set. So I kind of throw all this together as our individual realities. And the best answers are not made by individuals. The best answers are made by groups getting together, discussing it, and coming up with some kind of compromise. And that's one of the rules of thumb I'm going to always use, is I would rather run a dialogue than a monologue, but today you have to listen to me. So hopefully at the end we'll have plenty of time for questions, so write them down and ask them to me. The other thing that I'm going to simplify is what our world is made up of. And at this point there's 3 groups. It's individuals, each one of us, it's governments, and it's companies. And I'm going to break down how various decisions are made and what the roles and responsibilities of these are in our, or aren't, in our society today. Now, as an individual, again, the one thing this is to represent is our individual realities. And I think we have to be open to the fact that every one of us has a different point of view. But our points of view, if you are an interactive person with those around you, I think all of us can learn by interacting with people. And that is one of the positive things of getting together in groups, getting together in societies, getting together in social gatherings, things like that, is the learning and the interaction of people with each other. It's a lot more healthy than being with yourself, I think, and not interacting with other people. The next thing I think we need to all understand on the individual side is our first kind of responsibility is providing for the safety and well-being of our immediate family. That's ourself. If you're single, it's everything from the individual to your immediate family to your extended family, just depending on how you're set up that way. Various people have different social groups and things like that they're a part of. But what we're first looking for is to be having a stable and consistent, all the basics that we need. You know, food, housing, water, being able to have a job, getting education, transportation, things like that. That if those aren't secure, and our society and us as individuals can't provide that for each other and for those in our society, you're dealing with an altogether different, a lot more confrontational, a lot more people just trying to make a living and not really dealing with the quality or the style of living. And I think we're lucky enough that we're in a society that basically, between us and between our government and the various groups in our community, most of these basic needs are met. But a lot of the world isn't that way, and therefore they have a totally different view. And the next one for the individual then is, is once your individual needs are met, then you can deal with the community, then you can deal with the social aspects, then you can deal with the homeless, the people with drug addictions. Then you have time and effort and resources available to help that. So there's a big plus in societies that have the main basics covered, and they don't have to deal with those all the time. So that's my first thing, is the individual, is you have and you interact with those around you to provide information and to provide safety and interaction. On the government, the main thing that the government is there for, and it's to provide services and group or provide the needs of the residents in the community, whether it's the city level, the province level, the federal level. The idea of the government is to provide services that are bigger than the individual or the smaller communities that we do naturally ourselves. And this is basically, the government's role is to take advantage of volume. You can provide a waterworks system, or you can provide a sewer system a lot more efficiently if you do it for the full city than if you do it for your house or the neighborhood. So things like that, there is a benefit of numbers and size in a lot of things that the government provides. Education. There's a lot more consistency. There's available for everybody if it's provided by the larger community, the city or the province or the federal government, than if you have to do it by your family. So there's natural things that fall into the government realm. But basically, they're trying to cover the same needs of the individual as we are when we in our communities ourselves. They're not there. specifically on the first level to do anything else. They're not there to help, they shouldn't worry about if the various industries are successful, things like that. They're there to provide services for us. So, and the other thing on top of that then, the government also, they set laws, policies, and priorities and have agendas. And this is where we basically need to be protected from ourselves. We're in a resource extraction society in Canada. We basically make most of our money by taking things up and making things out of them or selling them to somebody. We as individuals or as groups, if there aren't any regulations, if there aren't any ways of interacting between people set up that are acceptable, there is no reason anything should be saved for tomorrow, because the value on the monetary side is now. And we've proven time and time again that we will take as much as we can on the fishing side, on the extraction side, whether it's minerals or various forest products, things like that. We can do it into extinction very easily and very quickly. And then it takes, if it ever comes back, then it takes a monumental effort to get things to come back, like the cod fisheries. It still isn't back on the East Coast. And we're still worried, now we're worried about salmon, what's going to happen there. And all that is a function of the government needs to have the studies and needs to provide the information so we can make educated guesses on what can we do, what can we take today so it is available tomorrow. So the government is one of the groups with our support and our direction that actually sets the laws, and one of their main reasons of existence is to limit us and make sure that there is stuff left for the next generation. So, and there's various people's feeling if that's happening or not. Okay. And the other thing that we always know about is the government is the one that collects money from all of us then to pay for all of this. And it's one of the big levers that we have. If we don't agree with what the government's doing, you can try to get taxes lowered or whatever. But at this point, it's kind of interesting because, especially in Canada, one of the things that the Canadian federal government is doing is they're using the budget to set the agenda. They don't have, we're not, at this point, we're not having the talks on what the agenda should be in an open forum. It's being done because budgets are being cut and therefore certain policies can't be enforced, and we never have any say in it. So it's kind of a different way around that's happening today. And so it's the government taking the budget to the point where you can actually control policy rather than policy controlling the budget. Corporations. The reason there are corporations, profit, not-for-profit, makes no difference, is to provide services and goods for us. We're consumers. We ask if we can't make, I don't have time to make all of our clothes or our food or furniture or build our house or build the roads, things like that. Some group, some corporation will set a price to do that for us, and we pay them to do it. That's because we're consumers, and that's either the government contracts it to make roads, or we go buy food, or we go buy cars, whatever. We as consumers are the ones that set the level for what needs to be produced, or the variation what needs to be produced. There is no implication of morality. There's no implication of better for the environment unless we as consumers make those decisions. If we ask for it, a company, a corporation, will make it available at a cost and at a price. And the successful ones make money for their shareholders. So one of the things that's inherent and one of the big problems of having an industry control itself is that the whole idea of a corporation is to make money for the shareholders. Sell a product, sell a service to make money. Because of that, one of their big, just kind of ongoing drives is to cut costs. So if they are taking care, if the industries are setting the regulations that they are regulated by and can perform their businesses by, you will tend to have an eroding of the various requirements for the industry because it costs them money. So that's one of the big things about who's minding the hen house that comes up all the time is if the financial industry is basically looking after itself, or the oil industry is looking after itself, or the mining industry is doing that, you will get a progressively worse result with time until there's a big disaster. Then all of a sudden everything ratchets up again and you have to pay more money because of this big disaster, so you have more safety things and stuff like that, but then a decade later, 2 decades later, it'll naturally always go down. The only way to change that is have policies, is have permits that have requirements all the time that are set up by an outside group. And sometimes this all gets lost in the wash of trying to have more jobs or trying to do something else by basically cutting costs, which means if costs are cut and there is a big disaster, who pays for it? Put your hands up. We do. It's not that the costs don't happen, it's just that we pay it rather than the company or rather than the group that causes them because they don't need to. It's not required. They're not required to respond quickly, or they don't have the resources to cover the cost of a big downturn or a big disaster. And that's one of the things that the government is there with our help to set up regulations and set up ways of dealing with disasters, if it's doing its job. Okay, the other thing, it's the for-profit is set up basically to make money for its shareholders. A not-for-profit corporation, it gets interesting. Because the not-for-profit just think of any, if you volunteered for a food bank or some church group or some civic group or the library or any social group providing medical services for your community or things like that. What are your guidelines on your budget? Basically, you raise as much money as you can to provide services, and then you spend it. There's no real long-term, there's usually not a long-term view, can we do this for the next 10, 15, 20 years? And that's one of the problems, is the way a normal not-for-profit corporation or group defines itself. I've had this discussion with various groups, is basically costs are hopefully contained and a needed service or product is provided efficiently. There is no reason to cut costs unless you don't have money. So it's an altogether different way of providing services. So a not-for-profit group, basically the emphasis is always on the services provided. and you try to do it as efficiently as possible, because most people will try to do that if you're on the board, or if you're providing money to the nonprofit, you want to make sure that they're efficient in what they do. But it's a lot different way of defining your group through the services rendered than through the profit side. So it's just some information that if you're on a board, it's an interesting way to think about things at times. So, who's looking after our future? Who is minding the chicken coop? Looking towards our future. If what I hope you realize is it's us. If we don't cause our government to do it, it will not be done. There's no other group out there that is looking for our future benefit unless we as individuals, or we as groups of individuals, do it ourselves. And here's a whole lot of things. The main thing I'm dealing with here, and I want to make it very clear, is there's a big difference between political parties and politicians. The politician is the guy that comes up to you, or the woman, the person that is your friend, is running for the government, is running for a position, whether it's local, whether it's provincial, whether it's federal. They're the ones that are really, they have their acts together and everything, and it's very good, except, and they're the ones that you elect. But then when whoever the politician is that goes to the group, whether it's provincial or federal, then all of a sudden the political parties are in charge, because they are elected and the government is formed by the political party. And it used, way back when, it used to be that governments were formed of the individuals coming in, but at this point, once the election happens, you know which party or groups of parties, coalitions, are going to be running it, and then all of a sudden, it's not the individual's needs or wants that are representing you, it's as much, if not more, what the party wants to happen that happens in the government. So I am here not talking about the individual, I'm talking about what happens when the parties are in charge. And the parties they're basically are there to keep in power, to keep the system going as it is. They love power. I mean, any of us, if we're in, one of the things is, absolute power corrupts absolutely type idea. Everything that comes out, and I think we have various examples of it, I'm going to show you some, of the whole idea of when your information is spun, the information that we're dealing with is given to us to make us think and make us act a certain way. Not that it ties into the truth. It's probably, in most cases, it's not outright lies. It's just spinning it to be to the best beneficial light that it can to the group that's giving it. So therefore, and a lot of the things that the political parties do that I think is really interesting is being able to sequester data that we have paid for on various studies and not let it out, which is interesting. That's happening more and more, lots of places. And the budget cuts are basically using, like I said earlier, they're using the budget cycle as the way to control policies and to control agendas. If you decrease what the Parks and Rec has, they can't do the studies they used to do, they can't make the baselines, they can't collect the data that can be used against or show that some of the decisions that are being made on the federal level might not be the correct ones. Same with universities and things like that. They control funding, various things. So the budget is very important. So what do parties do? That's again, the thing here is just I basically have used either the Vancouver Sun or the Globe and Mail, and just randomly cut, not randomly, I make my point. But you know, the muzzling, the train tragedy, various things are happening. Politics as a dirty word. It doesn't have to be. It's getting more and more that way. Looking for species on studies that are no longer present because they have died off already. And just the whole idea about technology and the budget cuts affecting not only us now, but this is what's really going to impact us if we don't have the baselines to make good decisions for the future. If we don't do it now, we won't have it in the future. So we're impacting, you know, the next generation by not funding a lot of the studies that we need. And I like printed media. The reason I like printed media is basically you can call people up, find out what they're talking about. You can actually read a lot bigger information, whether it's on the printed paper or on the website. And you have somebody that has to say it, and you know what the source is, and you can call them on it a lot easier than you can a lot of the 5, 10, 15 second sound bites we get on the radio a lot or on TV, where it's all cut to fit the time, not actually a lot of time the information they're trying to tell. So they cut the information to fit their time slot, rather than, you know, printing a lot more on the media side. So, but I just like the printed as much as anything. Now, not the for-profit corporations either, because here again, the big thing that corporations do is they give out information that's going to help their bottom line, which is the profit. They're going to be cutting costs wherever they can, because if you don't have as many costs, you make more profit. And over time, it's going to decrease the quality of the safety factors that are tied into the various, usually into the production streams. The safety factors get cut more and more and more until there's a disaster. Here's on July 20th, 2013, it was interesting, this was a Globe and Mail. They had this, and this is the Canadian Association of Petroleum Products. And it was interesting, this is true, but if you read the data, or that was behind this, they did it in July, but it was actually data from September 2012. And then they used the data from 2012 and projected it out over, you know, the next 10, 15 years, and they come up with this idea that we need this pipeline so we can not lose all this money because we can't get the Alberta oil to market. Okay, that was their view. On the exact same day, there was the present time. The present time is that everything that dealt. Yeah, well, yeah. Okay, sorry. I was supposed to spin after I was done talking. But anyhow, that was the spin cycle. But by the day that this was published, the article said that there is a parity, and basically at this point, the $40 million differential that the Canadian Petroleum Group was saying was actually down to $2 to $5 million a day, because there actually was parity, and this big difference that happened a year ago has passed. And that also fluctuates with time, which not many people know, and it's due to all sorts of worldwide factors, and the pipeline will have no impact on it, but we won't go there. And at instead of in the Globe and Mail, in the Vancouver Sun, the day or two after that, the big differential at this point is not whether you can get the oil to market, it's the quality of the oil. And way back when we had that the energy rate of return on investment, you saw that the Alberta sands were only a 5 versus other crudes that are up to 16. And the differential there is people don't want to buy Alberta sands because they're a lot harder to produce and a lot harder to refine. So the differential isn't a function of a pipeline, the differential is a function of the crude. But if you just read the advertisement, that was true, and they weren't lying, but it was true for only 1 month a year ago. So who do you believe? Who's looking after us? Who are our modern gatekeepers? And there, again, we're getting to the point where it's back to the individual. It's interesting because one of the consistent groups, and they have all sorts of political variations and everything, but if you can get a consensus of the First Nation groups, they're a lot better than us at setting long-term requirements for the environment, because they have lived there and their view is they're going to be around for centuries in the future. They have a different time frame than most Europeans. And it's a very interesting group that I think would be hope would be more included in the future in getting into talks and discussions. And have any of you listened to, over this past summer, the Enbridge was doing all of its going around to various communities and getting input. And they finally just cut them out because they just got lambasted every place they stopped. And the whole reason was because they came there, it was publicly said, we were here to listen to you. And it's required by the government when you're putting in a new project to get all the stakeholders to give you their input. But the Enbridge approach was to tell them what the project was, and then when everybody got upset about it, and Enbridge wouldn't budge, then from then on it was downhill. So the whole idea was it was the corporation coming in, telling everybody else what the project was, and not actually letting the process of the interaction with the public help define the project. So everybody got upset, of course. Volunteer gardeners. This was in the paper just recently about this guy that has a lot of acreage, that he's growing a lot of various vegetables and everything, and basically he just needs people to help come pick it. This is a great idea, and all the food, people volunteered, went out, picked it. You could take some home, get some free vegetables and everything for yourself, and go, and then all the rest of it goes to the food banks. This is great, unused land being used to grow food for the food banks. Oh, great idea. The homeless. It's another group that's real interesting and is not listened to much. What is the right, and I think we have to have some interesting discussions on this, especially in Vancouver, is what is the right of the individual to sleep on the park bench? Why shouldn't they? But then the other side of it is we don't want to see this person sleeping on the park bench and you feel intimidated by that person. So it's kind of an interesting interaction of some people just don't want to be in a shelter. They would rather be sleeping out. Should they have the right? I don't know. But it's an interesting interaction that happens because of an individual making a point of it. They have had an impact on our society. All the fires that were going on this past summer and are still going on, a group of researchers thought this was a great idea. They went out and they've been collecting all sorts of data, because one of the big questions is all the smoke that goes up and out of smokestacks. How does it impact, and how can you measure it? What kind of flow diagrams, and how high does it go? Various things like that they're collecting data for, that was kind of a hole in some of the predictions of warming Earth and all that kind of stuff. So they just took it upon themselves, went out and did it, because they knew it was a hole in the data. And they gathered it from a very viable alternative that was available for free. Go out and see what's happening with the forest fires and do a lot of measurements on them. Have you ever heard of a historical mineralogist? This woman has been studying Roman cement and has found out that Roman-made cement is stronger, and the process of making it is has less waste than modern-day way of making it. So, cool. What we do with it, I don't know, but it's kind of an interesting. We are not jumping ahead sometimes. And the other big thing, who are gatekeepers? There's an interesting group, a number of groups that are self-funding or having people with ideas. They're being set up, they're being financed by various groups, some of them investment groups, some of them by just local communities, startup businesses. There was one in the paper this morning about a group that is providing kind of kitchen availability for a lot of people. Instead of having a lot of startup money, they have a group kitchen where they make bread that they sell, or they make various products, and then they do it all as a group rather than each individual company having to make their own kitchen, which they don't have enough money, and they're small startups, so they can't. So it's kind of and then once they get big enough, the idea is then once you reach high enough level of income, then you can go out and start your own, and you break out, and then the next person comes in. But it's an interesting way of using community interaction and interacting with people of doing things like you do, or that you want to do, to help together make a big impact and to actually create jobs that way. Now, the other thing that we need to always remember is that we ourselves individually have choices. And this is just kind of a placeholder of kind of the idea when you're building a house, when you're buying a new house, when you're moving, when you have your upgrading, doing improvements. What kind of improvements do you put in? Are they more efficient? Are they the high-end efficiency, or they just look nice? And I think we have, as a society, need to go more and more towards the efficiency side rather than what it looks. And that's forgotten a lot of times. And actually, solar is making a big step in the last year or two, because the biggest cost now is the installation. It's not for the solar panels anymore. The cost of that has come down almost a quarter of what it used to be. So there again, I think we can work on the cost of installation. And it's one of these things that if you make a new building, most places it makes sense to put some kind of self-generating energy thing into the building, whether it's solar, whether it's thermal, or something like that. The improvements and the decrease in costs have come to the point where we can actually become more and more self-sufficient in our housing. And the cars, again, the best thing you can do with respect to cars is not buy one. Walk, do all sorts of bike, use public transit, keep your car for 20 years. Every car that we don't buy is a big savings for our environment. Because it's a lot of metal that's not made, it's a lot of waste that doesn't have to be gotten rid of, and it might be, if you buy a new car versus get an old car, okay, it might be more energy efficient, but when you put that full cost in of getting rid of your old one, if you can sell it or get it recycled to somebody else using it, okay, but still, we as a society are a lot better off if we keep cars for 20 years than if we keep cars for 10 years. Because it's not good for the car companies, but it's a lot better for the environment, just because there's less resources going into making cars. And then the whole idea of fuel cells is the next Vancouver is one of the leading areas where fuel cell research is happening, which is kind of cool. And that's where instead of using electricity or instead of using the hydrocarbons, the gasoline, it's combining hydrogen and oxygen, and the waste, the outproduct is water. So there is nothing going into the air except for water, water and water vapor. And it's coming on. They're still trying to make it smaller, but it's an interesting way of dealing with the car and the need for our society of some kind of transportation system on the individual level, because we all can't use public transit and it's too far lots of times just to walk or ride your bike. The other thing, of course, is how we make our decisions day to day on the food, is it sustainable, grown locally, the fish we buy, all this type of stuff we hear all the time. You know, the walking versus the biking, the walking and biking versus driving, and the whole idea of being active. If we don't participate in the public forums when they come up, we're basically sitting on the sideline and letting everybody else make the decision for us. And it's kind of like voting. My personal view is if you don't vote, if you aren't active in your community, you have no reason to complain. If you want to complain, you have to be active. So that's my view. So, how many of you walked, biked, or used public transit to get here versus drive? Great. That's good. And another whole thing that we haven't gotten to much today, because it is talking about sustainability, it's a very slippery surface. The whole idea there, it's oh well. The cradle to grave and the definition of sustainability, it's kind of like the same thing at present day as organic or local. It doesn't have a really agreed upon definition. So my definition of sustainability is looking at all the costs and all the needs from the day it started up a project to the day it is done. And that's all the waste streams, that's all the benefits, that's all the time and effort along the stream. And that's my view of the only way to really evaluate what we can do or shouldn't do. The whole idea of doing like what Enbridge is doing and what most projects are is they take a piece, the pipeline, and they say this is sustainable, this pipeline does not add to the greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. Okay, probably they're right, but what is going to be transported in that? Why is that project needed? You know, you can't deal with bits and pieces, you have to deal with the full picture, and anymore, we can't ignore the fact that we know these things. We have the knowledge, we have the information to really define what the cradle to grave costs are of projects, and that's the way they should be ranked. And if they have negative impacts, then you have to figure out how you mitigate those, how you make those, because we can't afford any more adding negative addings to our environment around us or to our social well-being. There's enough there already, I think. So, and the bottom line of this is if we don't pay for it, if we don't do a good accounting, somebody's going to pay for it in the future. And it'll be our kids, our grandchildren, exactly what we're doing now with the rising temperature in the atmosphere is we're paying the costs of prior non-representation of total costs. So that's one thing that I think is really key is the sustainability is only valid if you're looking at it as a project and the full impact and cost from beginning to end. What projects? There's a lot of things and a lot of articles, very intelligent, informed people are bringing up time and time again. The question is, are we as a nation or are we as a world still putting a lot of resources, a lot of time and energy into old answers? Are we dealing with the oil industry, and is it shaping our economy and is shaping our national agenda to the point where we are not being able to deal with potential future benefits, future projects that we should be dealing with? And that's one of the big things, is that the reason we need to do one of the big reasons we need to do the Alberta sands now is probably 10 years from now, it will not be economic, it will not be acceptable. So, do we need to do it at all, is my question. You know, should we be dealing with that, or should we be thinking about how can we get beyond the extractions in Alberta? Is there a way for us to do this? And I think we need to all be part of that. We all need to put our time and our effort and our knowledge into this, because I think there are some very good alternatives. And the other thing is that I think a lot of people, especially on the federal level, are losing sight of, is that if you keep backing the wrong horse, or not looking at the full picture, or people really questioning your insight into things, or you're governing by avoiding questions and governing by your budgeting, the whole government is losing credibility. And what happens at that point is that people don't participate as much. They just get disheartened with it all, and it takes a long time to get people back active again. So the government also needs to think about sustainability, and the only way to do that is to address problems in open forums. That's my view. You can't deal with problems by ignoring them or trying to have a single party making all the decisions. I think we're a lot better shape if everybody's involved rather than single, smaller groups. And we're just paying for it. Now from us, all of us should be coming up with sustainable ideas. This one was great, I thought. It was one of the nonprofits all of a sudden said, hey, and they got together with some people that had some containers, shipping containers, and they built some housing. And instead of, the low-income housing, instead of being $220,000 per unit, it is now, theirs was $82,500. Is that good? Yes, it's reusing things that would otherwise be sitting out there rusting. It'll be interesting to see, they're basically the same size units. So it didn't make any difference. The inside, the usable part of it was the same size, only it was making it out of a container versus making it out of sticks and wood and cement and everything. And it'll be interesting to see, the next level of input will be residents that are living in there saying, how can we improve this even more? And I guess there's more ideas on this line coming up. But it's just kind of breaking out of the norm. How can we do this for less? We know we need to provide low-income housing. How can we do it? And again, the free food. I mean, there's nothing better than using a field that is just sitting there and not being used for anything else, and then having people come pick it for you. And the key here is, what are your ideas? And sustainability. These are very important. We as individuals need to think about this. And I think we need to have some work groups and stuff like that. And this would be a great place to start, another whole discussion on, in a dialogue, not a monologue size. But this would be it'd be fun to do this. What is your vision? And I know that they try it on the political side, but I would like to try it on the social community side to figure it out. So, what is our role? The first one is to be an advocate. Because if we don't do it, nobody else will. And the key on this is that each one of us, because of all of our history and everything that we've learned in our lives, we each have our own unique reality, our own unique way of looking at things. And if we get a lot of these together, we'll come up with some really interesting answers to some long existing questions on how to best deal with some of our group society's problems or needs. And the other thing that I think we need to be open for is that each one of us doesn't have the answer. We need to be active, and we need to listen, and we need to interact with others and be able to compromise. Because no one person has the answer. None of us has the answer, and we can always get a better answer if we have group input. That's been shown many times. And here's an interesting statistic that I got way back when I was doing some training for nonprofits, is that we as a society, and the neat thing here is that there's a great sampling here, so we're probably more part of the 15% than normal, but a population, 15% are the ones that make the decisions and the ones that do the interaction. 85% are the ones that are waiting for the other 15% to do it. Think what kind of a world we could have if that 15% was 25 or 30 or 50% of interacting. I think we could come up with so many better answers to all of our questions that come up on our everyday life. So that's part of the charge too, is use your individualness and be active, participate, and you learn by doing. You learn so much more, like me giving this talk, I learn a lot more than being there sitting. So what I charge each one of you is to make one of these talks and give Roz an idea of what she needs to let you talk about. And of course, there is no free lunch. Make it count for your future, your decisions. Make your life count by being active. No matter what your age, no matter what your health, I think all of us here can have a big impact on the future of Vancouver or BC or Canada or the world. Because I think we have the knowledge and the database within us to provide some of the answers to a lot of the questions. And here's the plug. If you haven't had enough, join me starting October 23rd. Again, this is going to be everything you wanted to know and were never taught about the oil industry. It's not scientifically based. I'm going to give you a lot of information, and then you need to use it to go out and find out when a lot of the advertisements are spun, things like that. What does fracking mean? What is a pipeline versus a train versus an oil tanker? What are the pluses? What are the minuses? Kind of looking at the whole oil gas extraction industry and refining, and what are the costs, what are the questions that we should be thinking about and that we need to bring up with various groups.